Oh, so you heard what they've been calling you behind closed doors? Unhinged, strategic, dangerous, all in the same breath, all with that nervous laugh that people do when they're trying to convince themselves they're not terrified. Welcome to the most exclusive club on earth, the one where your enemies can't decide if you're crazy or calculated, if you're broken or brilliant, if you're losing it or if you've already won. And here's the beautiful, twisted truth. When they can't categorize you, when they can't fit you into their tiny little boxes of understanding, when their brains short-circuit trying to decode whether you're the victim or the villain, that's when you know you've transcended their entire game. That's when you know you've become something they never prepared for. Let's break down what just happened to you, because this isn't random. This isn't some accident of gossip. This is the exact moment when you became too powerful for their comprehension, too complex for their simple narratives, too evolved for their primitive understanding of human nature. When someone calls you unhinged, they're saying you've broken free from the chains they thought would hold you forever. When they call you strategic, they're admitting you're 10 moves ahead, and they just realized they've been playing checkers while you've been playing chess. When they call you dangerous, oh, that's the sweetest confession of all. Because what they really mean is, we can't control this person anymore, and that terrifies us to our core. You're not just living rent-free in their heads anymore. You've built an entire empire in there, and they're paying you in fear. Here's what happened. You stopped being predictable. You stopped responding the way broken people are supposed to respond. You stopped crying at their feet, stopped begging for their approval, stopped showing up to the emotional manipulation sessions they disguised as conversations. You went quiet, and that silence wasn't surrender. It was strategy. It was you pulling back to observe, to study, to understand the entire game they thought they were winning. And while they celebrated what they thought was your defeat, while they threw their little victory parties thinking you were destroyed, you were in the darkness sharpening every single blade they tried to stab you with. You were taking notes. You were studying their patterns, memorizing their weaknesses, understanding exactly how they operate. And now you've emerged, and you're not the same person they thought they buried. The unhinged part, let's talk about that, because that's their favorite word for anyone who refuses to play by the rules of a rigged game. You know what unhinged really means in their language? It means you stopped pretending. It means you stopped wearing the mask they needed you to wear, so they could feel comfortable. It means you stopped moderating your truth, stopped dimming your light, stopped making yourself smaller so they could feel bigger. When they call you unhinged, they're really saying, this person is authentic in a world where we're all performing. And that authenticity is making us realize how fake we are, and we hate them for it. You became too real for their fantasy. You became too honest for their lies. You became too free for their prison. And now they're trying to make freedom sound like madness, because if freedom is madness, then their cage sounds safe. But here's where it gets delicious. Here's where the contradiction in their words reveals everything. How can you be both unhinged and strategic? How can you be simultaneously out of control and 10 steps ahead? How can you be crazy and calculated at the exact same time? You can't. Those words contradict each other, and that contradiction exists because their minds are breaking trying to understand you. They're experiencing cognitive dissonance in real time. Their brains are literally malfunctioning because you don't fit their narrative. You're supposed to be either the emotional mess or the cold manipulator. You're supposed to be either the victim crying in the corner or the villain laughing maniacally. But you're both. You're neither. You're something they never encountered before. Something that doesn't exist in their limited playbook of human behavior. You cried, yes. You felt everything, yes. You were vulnerable, absolutely. But you were also watching. You were also learning. You were also calculating every single move, while your tears were still wet on your face. That's what they can't comprehend. That's what breaks their brain. They think emotion equals weakness and strategy equals coldness. but you proved that you can be emotionally intelligent and strategically brilliant. You can feel everything and still see everything. You can be hurt and still be steps ahead. You can be healing and still be winning. And that combination, that beautiful, terrifying combination of heart and mind working together instead of fighting each other, that's what makes you dangerous. Not dangerous in the way they want to paint you. Dangerous in the way that threatens their entire system of control. Let me tell you exactly what happened in their group chats, in their whispered conversations, in those late-night calls where they tried to figure you out. First, they called you weak. Remember that. They saw your pain and mistook it for powerlessness. They saw your tears and thought they'd won. They watched you retreat and threw a party thinking you'd never return. But then something shifted. Then you started moving different. Then you stopped responding to their provocations. Then you stopped explaining yourself. Then you stopped showing up to arguments you never started. And suddenly, they got nervous. Suddenly, the word weak didn't fit anymore. Suddenly, they had to upgrade their assessment. Suddenly, you became calculated. Suddenly, you became strategic. Suddenly, the person they thought was defeated started looking like someone who was just observing, studying, waiting. And that's when the fear crept in, because fear is just respect that hasn't admitted itself yet. When they started calling you strategic, what they meant was, we thought we knew this person's next move, and now we realize we never did. We thought we had them figured out, and now we realize they were figuring us out the entire time. Your silence wasn't confusion, it was calculation. Your absence wasn't weakness, it was wisdom. Your lack of reaction wasn't defeat, it was discipline. And they finally realized that every time they thought they were winning, you were letting them reveal themselves. Every time they thought they had you cornered, you were gathering information. Every time they thought they'd broken you, you were becoming unbreakable. The student became the teacher. The observed became the observer. The prey became the predator. But they still needed one more word, didn't they? Strategic wasn't enough. Unhinged wasn't enough. They needed something that captured the full scope of what you'd become, something that expressed the threat level you now represented to their peace of mind. Dangerous. That's the word they landed on. Dangerous. Not because you're violent, not because you're cruel, but because you're free, free from their opinions, free from their judgments, free from their manipulation, free from their control. And free people are the most dangerous people to those who profit from keeping others caged. You're dangerous because you can't be bought. You're dangerous because you can't be broken. You're dangerous because you learned their language, studied their tactics, understood their game, and decided you're not playing anymore. Here's what they don't understand. What they'll never understand until it's too late. You're not dangerous to them. You're dangerous for you. The danger isn't that you're going to destroy them. The danger is that you've already destroyed the version of yourself that needed them. You've already killed the part of you that sought their validation. You've already buried the person who showed up begging for scraps of their approval. That person is gone, dead, never coming back. And that's what haunts them. Because as long as you needed them, they had power. As long as you cared what they thought, they had leverage. As long as you were trying to prove yourself to them, they had control. But the moment you stopped caring, the moment you stopped explaining, the moment you stopped performing, you took all their power and converted it into your fuel. You want to know the exact moment they realized they'd lost? It wasn't when you fought back. It wasn't when you defended yourself. It wasn't when you tried to prove them wrong. It was when you stopped doing all of that. It was when you went so quiet that the silence became deafening. It was when you became so unreachable that they started reaching. It was when you became so indifferent that they became desperate for your attention. See, they were prepared for war. They had their weapons ready. They had their attacks lined up. They had their manipulations prepared. But you didn't show up to the battlefield. You didn't give them the war they wanted. You gave them something far worse: irrelevance. You made them irrelevant in your story. And for people whose entire identity was built on being central to your narrative, that's a fate worse than any confrontation. Now they're stuck in this loop, this beautiful, torturous loop, where they can't stop talking about you, but they also can't understand you. They describe you with contradictions because you are a contradiction to everything they thought they knew. You're soft but strong. You're kind but firm. You're forgiving but you don't forget. You're peaceful but you're not passive. You love but you have boundaries. You're open but you're not available to everyone. You're the paradox they never learned to solve, the equation that doesn't compute in their limited understanding of mathematics. And every time they try to put you in a box, every time they try to slap a label on you, every time they try to reduce you to a single word, you expand, you evolve, you transcend, you become more. Let's talk about what unhinged really reveals about them, not you. When someone calls another person unhinged, it's because that person has stepped outside the agreed-upon social contract of fake niceness and comfortable lies. It means you stopped pretending that everything was fine when it wasn't. It means you stopped smiling at people who stabbed you in the back. It means you stopped attending family dinners with people who gossiped about you in the kitchen. It means you stopped being professional with colleagues who were professionally undermining you. It means you stopped being mature about situations that required you to be a doormat. Unhinged doesn't mean you're crazy. Unhinged means the hinges that kept you attached to their dysfunction, to their toxicity, to their manipulation. Those hinges finally broke and you're free now. They needed those hinges. They needed you attached to their door. They needed you to keep coming back, keep showing up, keep participating in the cycle. Because as long as you were hinged to their system, they could open and close you at will. They could use you when convenient and shut you out when you became inconvenient. They could swing you back and forth between hope and disappointment, between acceptance and rejection, between love and abandonment. But unhinged means those days are over. Unhinged means you're no longer the door they can control. You're the storm they can't predict. You're the force they can't contain. You're the element they can't manipulate. And that's not madness. That's liberation. That's evolution. That's you finally becoming the person you were always meant to be before they tried to construct you into something manageable. The strategic accusation is even more revealing because it admits something they wish they could take back. You're smarter than they thought. You're more aware than they assumed. You're more capable than they gave you credit for. When they call you strategic, they're confessing that they underestimated you, and that underestimation cost them everything. They thought they were the chess players, and you were the pawn. They thought they were the authors, and you were the character they could write into any plot. They thought they were the directors, and you were the extra in the background of their story. But strategic means you were writing your own script the entire time. Strategic means you were directing your own movie while they thought they had the camera. Strategic means you were playing your own game while they thought you were a piece in theirs. You know what's beautifully ironic about being called strategic? It's usually said with contempt, as if strategy is a dirty word, as if planning is somehow wrong, as if thinking ahead makes you manipulative. But let's be clear. The only people who have a problem with you being strategic are the people whose strategies failed against yours. The only people who complain about you thinking ahead are the people who can't keep up. The only people who call planning manipulative are the people whose manipulations you saw coming from miles away. They're not actually mad that you're strategic. They're mad that your strategy worked and theirs didn't. They're not actually upset that you planned. They're upset that they didn't plan for you to plan. They thought they were the only ones with a strategy, and the revelation that you had one too, one that was better than theirs, that shattered their entire perception of reality. Here's the thing about being called dangerous. Dangerous to who? Dangerous for what? You're not dangerous to innocent people. You're not dangerous to genuine souls. You're not dangerous to people who operate with integrity. You're only dangerous to liars, manipulators, energy vampires, and people who profit from chaos. You're dangerous to fake friendships built on gossip. You're dangerous to toxic family dynamics that require a scapegoat. You're dangerous to workplace politics that thrive on drama. You're dangerous to relationships that need you to stay small. You're not dangerous in general. You're specifically dangerous to anything that isn't serving your highest good. And that's the kind of dangerous the world needs more of. That's the kind of dangerous that changes lives. That's the kind of dangerous that breaks generational curses. They want you to feel ashamed of being called dangerous, but you should wear it like armor, because the same people calling you dangerous are the same people who stayed silent when you were being destroyed. The same mouths forming the word dangerous are the same mouths that smiled in your face while plotting behind your back. The same voices expressing concern about your dangerous behavior are the same voices that whispered about your downfall. So when they call you dangerous, translate that correctly. They're saying you're no longer controllable. They're saying you're no longer predictable. They're saying you're no longer the person they could manipulate with guilt, obligation, or fear. And that's not something to apologize for. That's something to celebrate. Let me paint you a picture of what happened behind the scenes, in the moments you weren't there to witness. Picture them sitting around, trying to make sense of your transformation. Someone says, they're just being emotional, they'll calm down. But you don't calm down in the way they expect. You calm down by cutting them off entirely. So someone else says, they're being calculated, they're planning something. But you're not planning revenge, you're planning your peace. Then someone else says, they're dangerous, we need to be careful. But you're not dangerous to them unless they try to re-enter your life. You're just dangerous to the narrative they created about you. You're dangerous to the lies they told themselves. You're dangerous to the comfort they found in your dysfunction. The confusion in their assessment of you, the contradiction in their words, that's the sound of cognitive dissonance. That's the sound of reality not matching their expectations. That's the sound of someone trying to explain something that doesn't fit into their understanding of how things work. Because in their world, people are simple. In their world, you're either strong or weak, smart or dumb, good or bad. But you showed up as strong in your vulnerability, smart in your silence, good in your boundaries. You showed up as a complex human being in a world that wanted you to be a simple character. And complex characters can't be easily described. Complex characters require nuance, depth, understanding. But they don't have that capacity. So they throw words at you hoping something sticks, hoping they can reduce you to something manageable, hoping they can make sense of what doesn't make sense. But here's what you need to understand. Their inability to categorize you is not your problem. Their confusion about who you are is not your responsibility to clarify. Their discomfort with your complexity is not your cue to simplify yourself. You are not required to make yourself digestible to people who never had the appetite for your truth anyway. You are not required to dim your multifaceted nature so they can see you clearly with their limited vision. You are not required to become one-dimensional so they can understand you with their one-dimensional thinking. Let them be confused. Let them contradict themselves. Let them struggle to put you in a box. Meanwhile, you keep expanding. You keep evolving. You keep becoming more of who you authentically are. The moment you accept that you'll never make sense to people who are committed to misunderstanding you, that's the moment you become truly free. The moment you stop trying to correct their perception, stop trying to prove them wrong, stop trying to show them who you really are, that's the moment you reclaim all the energy you've been wasting on people who will never appreciate it anyway. See, they don't want to understand you. They want to underestimate you. They don't want clarity about who you are. They want confirmation of who they need you to be for their narrative to work. And when you stop giving them that confirmation, when you stop playing the role they assigned you, when you stop being the character they wrote, that's when the accusations start flying. Unhinged, strategic, dangerous. Let's reclaim these words right now, because in the right context, these are compliments disguised as criticisms. Unhinged from their toxic expectations? Good. Strategic about protecting your peace? Excellent. Dangerous to their comfort zones built on your compliance? Perfect. You're not what they're calling you. You're what they're afraid you've become. Uncontrollable, unpredictable, unavailable for their games. That's the real trinity they're describing. That's the actual transformation they're witnessing. That's the evolution they're trying to stop by making it sound negative. But you can't stop evolution by calling it names. You can't stop growth by labeling it as dangerous. You can't stop someone's awakening by calling them unhinged. Here's what they'll never tell you, what they'll never admit even to themselves. They're jealous. Behind every criticism is a confession of envy. Behind every attempt to diminish you is their acknowledgement that you've grown beyond their reach. Behind every word meant to make you feel small is their fear that you're becoming too big for them to manage. They're jealous of your freedom while they're still imprisoned by what people think. They're jealous of your authenticity while they're still performing for approval. They're jealous of your peace while they're still addicted to drama. They're jealous of your growth while they're still stagnant. So they dress up their jealousy in concern, wrap their envy in criticism, disguise their fear in judgment. You want proof they're obsessed with you? They're still talking about you. After all this time, after all this distance, after all this silence from your end, they're still talking about you. You're living your life, focused on your path, building your future, and they're in group chats dissecting your every move. You're healing in private, and they're analyzing your healing in public. You're moving forward, and they're stuck in the past trying to figure out what happened. That's not indifference. That's not someone who's moved on. That's someone who's haunted by the person they thought they defeated who somehow came back stronger. That's someone who's tortured by the reality that you didn't need them to recover, didn't need their apology to move forward, didn't need their validation to know your worth. Welcome back, you terrifying calm in their storm. You unshaken force that makes their hands tremble when they try to hold the wheel. Welcome to the conversation they don't want you to hear, the one where we talk about what happens when fear stops being your master and starts being your shadow. Silent and irrelevant, trailing behind you like a ghost that forgot how to haunt. They've been watching you, haven't they? Not casually, not with passing interest, but with the kind of obsession reserved for things they can't control, can't predict, can't break. They watch the way you walk into rooms like gravity shifted just for you, the way you speak without apology, without that trembling need for approval that makes most people sound like they're begging even when they're just breathing. They watch your eyes, and what terrifies them most isn't anger or rage or violence. It's the emptiness of fear, the complete absence of the flinch they've been trained to expect from every human being with a pulse. You stopped being afraid. And that broke something fundamental in their understanding of how this world is supposed to work. Because fear is the currency, isn't it? Fear is how they keep the masses in line, how they sell insurance and religion and politicians and products that promise to protect you from the monsters under the bed. Fear is the invisible leash they use to walk humanity like dogs, yanking it tight whenever someone starts sniffing at freedom. But you cut the leash, didn't you? You didn't just loosen it or negotiate a longer chain. You took a blade to that thing and smiled while the leather split, and now they're standing there holding nothing, watching you walk away without looking back, and they can't comprehend it. They keep pulling, expecting resistance, but there's nothing to pull anymore because you're not tethered to their terror. You're not bound by their warnings. You're not frozen by their threats. You're just gone, existing in a frequency they don't have access to, and that is what makes you dangerous. Let's get surgical here. Let's cut into exactly why your fearlessness doesn't just confuse them, it haunts them in ways they'll never admit out loud. See, they built their entire identity around managing fear. around being cautious, around playing it safe, around sacrificing dreams for security and calling it wisdom. They convinced themselves that fear was intelligence, that anxiety was awareness, that terror was just being realistic about the world. They wore their cowardice like armor and called it maturity, and for years, decades even, that story held together because everyone around them was doing the same dance, the same shuffle, the same slow march toward comfortable mediocrity. But then you showed up, or rather, you transformed, and suddenly their entire philosophical framework started cracking like cheap glass under pressure. Because if you can exist without fear, if you can thrive without their precious anxiety, if you can walk through fire and laugh instead of scream, then what does that make them? It makes them obsolete, doesn't it? It makes every excuse they ever made look like exactly what it was, a lie they told themselves to justify never becoming who they could have been. They see you turn down opportunities that terrify others with a shrug. They watch you walk away from toxic situations without drama or explanation. They witness you speak truth in rooms where everyone else is performing elaborate pantomimes of politeness. And it breaks them. Not because you're cruel, not because you're reckless, but because you're free. And freedom in a prison looks like insanity to the inmates. They've spent so long negotiating with their chains, polishing them, naming them, pretending they chose them, that someone walking around unchained looks like a threat to the entire structure. Your lack of fear doesn't just challenge their choices, it reveals them. It holds up a mirror to every moment they said yes when they meant no, every dream they buried because someone said it was too risky, every time they let fear win and called it wisdom. You are the evidence that another way exists, that the walls were always made of paper, that the monsters were always projections, and they hate you for it, because now they have to live with the knowledge that they didn't have to live like this, that they chose the cage, that every year spent in comfortable fear was a year stolen from themselves, by themselves. They watch you make decisions in seconds that would paralyze them for months. They see you embrace uncertainty like an old friend. They witness you treat failure like data instead of death. And it triggers something primal in them, something ancient and animal that screams danger, danger, danger. Not because you're threatening them directly, but because your existence is a threat to every story they use to sleep at night. You're not playing by the rules they memorized. You're not respecting the invisible contracts they signed in blood and tears. You're not afraid of the consequences they've been taught to fear. And that makes you unpredictable, uncontrollable, and therefore terrifying in ways they can barely articulate even to themselves. They'll try to diagnose you. They'll say you're reckless or arrogant or naive. They'll pathologize your courage and medicalize your freedom. Anything to avoid confronting the simple, devastating truth that you're not broken, you're not damaged, you're just awake. And they're still sleeping, still dreaming that their fear is keeping them safe when really it's just keeping them small. But here's what they'll never understand about you. Here's the part that doesn't fit their neat little theories about trauma and risk-taking and psychological profiles. You didn't become fearless because you're lucky, because you're privileged, because life went easy on you and gave you confidence wrapped in bubble wrap and handed down from generous parents. No. You became fearless because you've already been through the worst, because you've already died in every way that matters, because you've stared into the abyss so many times that eventually you stopped blinking and started taking notes. They think fearlessness is the absence of experience, but in your case, it's the accumulation of it. It's what happens when pain stops teaching you to avoid and starts teaching you to endure. When betrayal stops making you cautious and starts making you selective. When failure stops feeling like death and starts feeling like information. You didn't avoid the fire, you walked through it so many times that eventually your skin stopped burning and started reflecting the flames back at anyone stupid enough to try lighting you up again. You know what real fearlessness looks like. It's not bravado, it's not performance, it's not the loud chest-puffing ego trip that insecure people mistake for confidence. Real fearlessness is quiet. It's the absence of reaction. It's the steady heartbeat in situations that would send others into cardiac arrest. It's the ability to look at your worst nightmare and say, okay, and what else you got? You've been abandoned, so abandonment doesn't scare you anymore. You've been betrayed, so betrayal just confirms what you already knew about human nature. You've been broke, so money doesn't control you. You've been alone, so isolation feels like peace instead of punishment. Every fear they use to manipulate the masses has already happened to you, and you survived it, metabolized it, turned it into armor that doesn't look like armor because it's just your skin now, tougher, scarred, but still soft enough to feel everything without flinching. That's the paradox they can't crack. You feel everything and fear nothing. You're not numb, you're not detached, you're not cold. You're just done letting fear dictate your moves. Done treating anxiety like prophecy. Done respecting warnings from people who never took a risk worth remembering. They see your calm and mistake it for ignorance. They witness your peace and assume you don't understand the stakes. But you understand better than anyone because you've already paid the price they're terrified of paying. You've already lost what they're clutching with white knuckles. You've already survived what they stay up at night praying never happens to them. And that gives you a freedom they'll spend their entire lives envying from a safe distance. You're not fearless because nothing can hurt you. You're fearless because you've already been hurt in every configuration possible, and you're still standing, still moving, still building, still breathing, without asking permission from the universe to take up space. They wanted you to break. The world tried to break you. Circumstances conspired to break you, and you didn't break. You bent, you stretched, you transformed, but you didn't shatter. And now you exist in this liminal space where fear has no leverage because there's nothing left to threaten you with, nothing you haven't already survived, nothing you're not willing to lose, if that's what freedom costs. And now that you've arrived at this place of unshakable calm, watch what happens to the people around you. Watch how your fearlessness becomes their crisis. They start testing you, don't they? Throwing little challenges your way to see if you'll flinch, dropping subtle threats to check if you're still controllable, creating drama to see if you'll react the way you used to when fear was still driving the vehicle. But you don't react, you don't engage, you don't take the bait, and that sends them into a tailspin because their entire playbook is built on getting reactions, on triggering fear responses, on watching people scramble and panic and negotiate. When you just stand there, unaffected, unmoved, unbothered, it short-circuits their entire operating system, and suddenly they don't know what to do with you. They don't know how to categorize you. They don't know whether you're the threat or they've been the threat all along. And you just stopped pretending not to notice. Watch them try to make you afraid. It's almost comical if it wasn't so pathetic. The way they'll bring up consequences and risks and worst-case scenarios like they're revealing information you haven't already considered, calculated, and decided you're willing to accept. They'll warn you about failure like you haven't already failed and rebuilt. They'll caution you about loss like you haven't already lost everything that mattered and discovered you could live without it. They'll threaten you with isolation, like being alone isn't exactly where you found yourself in the first place. Every card they play is a card you've already seen. Every move they make is a move you've already survived. And watching them try to intimidate someone who's already been to hell and took souvenirs is like watching a child threaten a war veteran with a water gun, adorable in its delusion, tragic in its impotence. They're still operating from a place of fear, still making decisions based on avoiding pain, still treating safety like it's the highest virtue. And you're operating from a completely different dimension, where safety is optional and pain is just part of the price of admission to a life worth living. The really beautiful part, the part that makes this whole thing poetic, is watching them project their fear onto you and call it concern. Oh, they're so worried about you, so concerned about your choices, so desperate to help you see reason. But if you look closely, if you really examine what they're saying, you'll realize they're not worried about you at all. They're worried about what your freedom says about their captivity. They need you to be afraid because if you're not afraid, then they have to confront why they are. They need you to fail because if you succeed without playing it safe, then every safe choice they ever made looks like cowardice instead of wisdom. They need you to suffer consequences because if you don't, then the universe isn't fair, and all their sacrifices were just sacrifices instead of investments. Your fearlessness is an indictment they didn't ask for, a mirror they didn't want to look into, a question they don't want to answer, and so they double down. They amplify the warnings. They catastrophize your future. Anything to avoid sitting with the uncomfortable possibility that they've been living wrong and you've been living right, and it's too late for them to start over now. But here's where it gets interesting. Here's where the script flips and you realize that for every person your fearlessness terrifies, there's another person it magnetizes, draws in, captivates, inspires. Because while the cowards are busy being scared of you, the brave ones are watching you like you're a roadmap to a country they've only dreamed about visiting. They're studying your moves like scripture, trying to decode how you did it, how you broke the chains they're still wearing, how you walk without limping under the weight of anxiety they carry like stones in their pockets. You've become a beacon, whether you wanted to or not. A signal fire on a dark hill that says, another way is possible. You can live without fear. You can move without asking permission. You can exist without shrinking yourself to fit inside their comfort zones. And the people who are ready to hear that message, they gravitate toward you with an intensity that's almost uncomfortable because they see in you the version of themselves they're trying to become, and they want to be near that energy, want to absorb that frequency, want to learn the language you speak that sounds like freedom in a world of negotiated surrenders. They ask you how you do it, how you stay so calm, how you make decisions that would paralyze them, how you walk away from situations they'd stay in for years trying to fix. And the truth is you don't have a formula, you don't have a system, you don't have 5 easy steps to fearlessness that they can implement by next Tuesday. What you have is a body count of fears you've already faced and survived, a graveyard of anxieties you've buried after realizing they were just ghosts, a collection of scars that prove you can bleed without dying. And that's not something you can teach in a workshop or distill into a viral post. That's something each person has to earn through their own fire, their own failures, their own face-to-face encounters with the things that terrify them most. You can show them the door, you can stand as proof that it opens, but you can't walk through it for them. That's their journey, their transformation, their choice to make the same decision you made when you decided that living afraid was worse than dying free. And some of them will make that choice. Some of them will watch you long enough to realize you're not special, you're not superhuman, you're not blessed with some genetic immunity to fear. You're just someone who decided the cost of courage was worth paying and the price of cowardice was too high to keep paying. They'll see that and something will click. Some dormant part of them will wake up and say, yes, I want that. I'm willing to do what it takes to get that. I'm ready to stop negotiating with my fears and start evicting them from the throne they've been sitting on for my entire life. Those people, they're the ones who make this whole thing worthwhile. They're the ones who justify your existence as a disruptor, a pattern breaker, a living example that the rules were always optional and the cages were always unlocked, and the only thing keeping anyone trapped was the belief that escape wasn't possible. You didn't set out to be a teacher or a leader or an inspiration. You just set out to be free. But freedom is contagious. It spreads like wildfire in a dry forest, and now you're watching people catch flame, and it's beautiful and terrifying, and exactly what this world needed, even if it doesn't know how to handle it yet. But let's talk about the shadow side. Let's acknowledge the cost that nobody mentions when they're making motivational posts about being fearless and unstoppable and free. Because, yes, you're not afraid anymore. Yes, you've broken the chains. Yes, you walk through life like you own it because, in a very real sense, you do. But there's a loneliness that comes with that altitude. an isolation that settles in when you realize most people can't meet you where you are, can't match your energy, can't handle your intensity, can't exist in the same space without feeling small or threatened or confused. You've outgrown conversations that used to sustain you. You've evolved past relationships that used to feel meaningful. You've transcended concerns that used to consume you. And now you're standing on a mountain, looking down at the village you used to live in, and it's beautiful from up here. It's peaceful. It's free. But it's also empty in ways you didn't anticipate when you were still climbing. The fearless life is a solitary life. Not because you want it that way, not because you're antisocial or arrogant or above connection, but because operating without fear puts you in a different frequency than the majority of humanity. And frequencies that don't match create static, create friction, create misunderstandings that no amount of explanation can resolve. They look at your calm and think you don't care. They see your boundaries and call you cold. They witness your lack of reaction and assume you're emotionless. When the truth is, you feel everything more intensely than they ever could. You've just learned not to let those feelings control you, not to let emotions become tyrants, not to mistake every wave of anxiety for a tsunami of truth. You process differently now. You metabolize experience differently. You relate to life differently. And that makes you incompatible with people who are still living in fear-based operating systems, still making decisions to avoid pain instead of pursue purpose, still treating safety like it's more valuable than authenticity. And yes, there are moments, quiet moments usually, late at night or early in the morning when the world is still asleep and you're awake with your thoughts, when you wonder if it was worth it. If this freedom you fought so hard for is really freedom, or just another kind of cage, a self-imposed exile from the warm, comfortable prison everyone else is living in. You wonder if maybe they're right, maybe you're too much, maybe you're too intense, maybe you should dial it back, soften the edges, make yourself more accessible, more relatable, more normal. But then the sun comes up, and you remember why you chose this path. You remember what it felt like to live afraid, to make decisions based on other people's opinions, to carry anxiety like a backpack full of stones everywhere you went. And you realize that loneliness is just the price of admission to a life lived on your own terms. And it's a price you're willing to pay because the alternative, going back to sleep, going back to fear, going back to playing small so other people can feel big, that's not an option anymore. That door closed behind you, and you burned it for warmth on cold nights when freedom felt more like punishment than prize. Here's what they'll never be able to take from you, no matter how hard they try, no matter what weapons they deploy, no matter how many people they send to test you, study you, break you down, and build you back up in their image. They can't take your calm. They can't steal your peace. They can't strip you of the fundamental, unshakable knowing that you've already survived the worst and everything else is just bonus content. Extra levels in a game you're playing for fun now instead of survival. That's the real power of fearlessness, not the ability to do dangerous things or take reckless risks or walk through fire without feeling heat, but the absolute certainty that whatever happens next, you'll handle it, you'll adapt, you'll survive, you'll find a way because that's what you've always done. That's who you've become. That's the muscle you've built through repetition and pain and experience. They can attack your reputation and you'll rebuild it or realize you don't need it. They can sabotage your relationships and you'll form new ones or learn to thrive alone. They can destroy your plans and you'll make new plans or embrace the chaos. Every move they make, every trap they set, every bomb they drop just proves what you already know, that you're unbreakable not because nothing can hurt you, but because you know how to heal, how to adapt, how to turn wounds into wisdom and setbacks into setups for something better. Oh, you already know, don't you? Yeah, I see it in the way you move now. Different, calculated, like someone who's been reading a book everyone else thought was still locked. They're sitting there right now, hearts racing, palms sweating, praying to whatever forces they believe in that you never find out what they said about you in those rooms you weren't invited to. But here's the thing that's eating them alive from the inside out. You already know. Not because someone told you, not because you overheard, but because liars have a language and you became fluent without even trying. Let me paint you a picture that's probably making your skin tingle with recognition right now. For months, maybe years, you felt it. That shift, that change in the air when you walked into rooms. The way conversations would stumble and fall over themselves like drunk people pretending to be sober. The way their eyes couldn't quite meet yours anymore, not because of shame, no, that would require a conscience, but because looking at you meant confronting the evidence of their betrayal, walking, breathing, thriving. They turned your name into currency in circles you'll never be part of, spending it carelessly, recklessly, thinking the transaction was invisible. But you beautiful, dangerous thing, you learned to read the receipts they didn't know they were leaving. Every forced smile was a confession. Every overcompensating compliment was an admission. Every time they asked how you were doing with that fake concern dripping from their voice like poison disguised as medicine, they were really asking, "Do you know yet? Have you figured it out? Have you connected the dots we thought we scattered far enough apart?" And you let them wonder. You let them sit in that uncertainty while you collected every piece of evidence they accidentally dropped. They wanted you confused, destabilized, questioning your own perception of reality. That's what people do when they can't afford for you to trust your instincts. They needed you to doubt the very thing that was screaming the truth at you from every direction. But something happened that they didn't account for in their little scheme. Your intuition didn't just survive their gaslighting. It evolved. It sharpened. It became a weapon they handed you themselves by trying to dull it. Now you don't just sense lies. You can smell them from 3 conversations away. The funniest part, the part that would make you laugh if it wasn't so pathetically predictable, is how they're moving now. Careful, tentative. Like people walking through a room they booby-trapped themselves, trying to remember where they placed all the explosives. They're watching you watch them. And it's driving them absolutely insane because they can't tell what you know, what you've figured out, what you've pieced together in that mind. They underestimated so severely it should be a crime. They thought you were naive. They mistook your kindness for blindness, your patience for stupidity, your silence for ignorance. You want to know what they said? Of course you do. Not because you need confirmation, you're past that now, but because there's something satisfying about hearing out loud what you already decoded in the silence. They said you were difficult. They said you were dramatic. They said you couldn't be trusted, which is rich, absolutely rich, coming from people whose entire existence is built on a foundation of carefully constructed lies. They said you were too much and somehow simultaneously not enough. They painted you as the problem, because admitting they were the poison would mean looking in mirrors they've been avoiding their entire lives. In coffee shops and group chats, in phone calls that went late into the night, they dissected you like you were a specimen and they were scientists. Except scientists have ethics and methodology, and these people just had bitterness and time to waste. They analyzed your choices, your words, your silence, your presence, your absence. Everything you did was evidence of something dark in their narrative. If you spoke up, you were aggressive. If you stayed quiet, you were passive-aggressive. If you succeeded, you were showing off. If you struggled, you were finally getting what you deserved. There was no winning because the game was rigged from the start. They told stories about you that had just enough truth to sound credible and just enough lies to destroy you. That's the art of character assassination, isn't it? You take a real moment, a genuine interaction, something that actually happened, and then you twist it. You add context that never existed. You remove the parts that would make you look bad. You season it with implications and serve it to people who were already predisposed to believe the worst about you, because believing the worst about you meant they didn't have to examine the worst in themselves. And here's where it gets really interesting. They didn't just talk about you to strangers or acquaintances. No, That wouldn't satisfy the depth of their obsession with tearing you down. They went to people you loved, people you trusted, people who knew you, or at least you thought they did. They planted seeds in gardens you thought were secure, whispering their version of you into ears that were supposed to be loyal. Some of those people, to their credit, didn't believe it, but some did. And that's the betrayal that cuts differently, isn't it? Not the enemies who attacked you. You expect that. But the ones who were supposed to stand beside you and instead stood aside to watch. They said you were changing, and they weren't wrong about that. You were changing. You were evolving past the version of yourself that tolerated disrespect disguised as friendship. You were growing beyond the boundaries of their comfort zones, and that terrified them because your growth highlighted their stagnation. So they reframed your evolution as corruption, your strength as arrogance, your boundaries as cruelty. Because if they could convince everyone, including yourself, that your transformation was negative, maybe you'd shrink back down to the size that made them feel bigger. But here's what they didn't understand about you, and this is where their entire plan started crumbling before they even realized it was falling apart. You're not the type to just feel something and leave it there. No, you're a collector. Not of grudges, that's too simple, too expected. You collect patterns. You collect inconsistencies. You collect the little moments that don't add up, storing them away in a part of your mind that never stops working, never stops processing, never stops putting together the puzzle they thought they'd scattered too thoroughly to ever be reassembled. Every time someone came to you with concern that felt rehearsed, you noted it. Every time you were excluded from something you should have been part of, you remembered it. Every time someone shared information with you that contradicted what they'd said before, you filed it away. You weren't paranoid. You were aware. There's a massive difference that people who've never had to protect themselves from psychological warfare will never understand. Paranoia is seeing threats that don't exist. Awareness is seeing the threats that absolutely do exist, and everyone's pretending don't. They got sloppy. That's what always happens with liars who think they're smarter than they actually are. They forgot who they told what. Person A got version 1 of the story. Person B got version 2. Person C got a completely different narrative altogether. And when those people talk to each other, which eventually they always do, the contradictions started piling up like bodies after a massacre. But you stayed consistent. Your story never changed because your story was true. Truth doesn't need multiple versions. Truth doesn't need to be workshopped and refined and adjusted based on the audience. You started noticing the little things they didn't think you'd catch. The way they'd bring up topics in conversation that only made sense if they'd been discussing you behind your back. The way they'd reference things you never told them. Information they could only have gotten from someone else talking about your private business. The way they'd accidentally reveal they knew about situations they weren't present for, then scramble to cover it up like you wouldn't notice the slip. But you noticed everything. You always did. They mistook your kindness for inattention, fatal error. And then came the moment, or maybe it was several moments, when people started coming to you with the truth. Not everyone stayed loyal to the lie. Some people have consciences that eventually overpower their cowardice. Some people couldn't live with what they'd participated in. Some people saw you thriving despite everything and realized they'd backed the wrong horse. They came to you, guilt dripping from their confessions like blood from a wound, telling you what was said, who said it, when it was said, where it happened. They thought they were revealing something shocking. They didn't know you'd already solved the entire equation. You just let them confirm your calculations. Now here's where you did something absolutely brilliant. Something that separates you from everyone who's ever been betrayed and immediately blew up about it. You didn't confront them. You didn't expose them. You didn't give them the satisfaction of knowing they'd gotten to you. Instead, you did something far more devastating. You let them think they were getting away with it. You kept being cordial, kept being civil, kept showing up with that same face that gave away nothing while your mind was 3 steps ahead, already planning your exit from their entire existence. This drove them absolutely insane, and if you're paying attention, you've seen it. The way they push a little harder, trying to get a reaction. The way they drop hints about things they said, testing to see if you know. The way they watch your face when certain topics come up, searching for any sign that you've heard, that you've discovered, that you've figured out their whole game. But you give them nothing. Stone, steel, absolute composure. Because you learn something they never will. Silence is not weakness. Silence is strategy. Silence is the trap they walk into thinking it's a path. You went about your life like none of it mattered. And in a way, that was the truest thing you could have done. Because it didn't matter. Their opinions, their lies, their desperate attempts to diminish you, none of it had the power to actually touch who you are. You kept building, kept growing, kept succeeding, kept healing, kept evolving into the exact person they were praying you'd never become. Every goal you achieved was a direct contradiction to the narrative they were selling. Every level you reached made their stories about you sound more and more ridiculous to anyone with functioning brain cells. Meanwhile, they're stuck, frozen in the same patterns, the same behaviors, the same toxic cycles they accused you of being trapped in. They're still talking about you, years later sometimes, because they have nothing else. Their entire identity became wrapped up in being against you, and when you removed yourself from their proximity, they lost their purpose. They're like actors who only know one role, and the show got canceled, but they keep performing to an empty theater hoping someone will care. Spoiler alert, nobody does. Nobody ever really did. You became untouchable not through aggression or revenge or exposing them, though you could have, and they know you could have. You became untouchable by being so genuinely unbothered by their existence that they cease to be a factor in your decision-making. They're not your enemies. They're not even your problem. They're just people you used to know who made choices that revealed exactly who they were, and you made choices that revealed exactly who you are. The contrast is so stark it's almost comedic. But let's talk about what's happening to them now, because this is where the story gets really interesting. They thought getting away with it meant peace. They thought if you never confronted them, never called them out, never made a scene, that meant they won. Oh, how wrong they were, how devastatingly, cosmically wrong. Because you not knowing would have been their comfort. You not knowing would have allowed them to sleep at night. But you knowing and not saying anything, that's psychological warfare. They don't have the weapons to fight. They lie awake now. Not every night, maybe, but enough. Enough to matter. Enough to slowly drive them toward a reckoning with themselves they're not equipped to handle. They replay conversations with you, searching for signs they missed. Did you know then? Do you know now? That comment you made, was that a hint? That look you gave? Was that confirmation? They're haunted by the possibility, no, the probability, that you've been 5 steps ahead this entire time, watching them perform their innocence while you collected every receipt they dropped. And the paranoia, oh, the beautiful poetic justice of it, is eating them from the inside out. They start seeing meanings in everything you do. You post something on social media, and they think it's about them. You succeed at something, and they think you're doing it to spite them. You're happy, and they convince themselves you're faking it to make them feel bad. They've projected so much onto you for so long that now they can't separate reality from their own guilty conscience. You've become the mirror they can't escape, reflecting back everything they tried to hide. Their relationships are suffering. How could they not be? You can't build anything real on a foundation of lies and betrayal. The people they turned against you, some of them are starting to see through it. Some of them are watching these obsessed individuals still talking about you months or years later and thinking, this is weird, this is concerning, why are they so fixated? And slowly, quietly, the narrative is shifting. Not because you're defending yourself, you don't need to. The truth has a way of surfacing even when it's been buried under mountains of manipulation. They're watching you thrive, and it's destroying them in ways they'll never admit out loud. Every success you achieve, is a dagger to the story they told about you. Every happy moment you share contradicts the narrative of you being miserable and destroyed like they predicted. Every boundary you maintain proves you're not the weak person they tried to paint you as. You're the evidence that their version of reality was always fiction. And fiction doesn't hold up under the weight of lived truth. Let's talk about what you learned from all of this, because the education they gave you, though painful, was priceless. You learned that people's actions toward you have very little to do with you, and everything to do with what's happening inside them. Hurt people hurt people. Insecure people try to make others feel insecure. People who hate themselves try to make you hate yourself, so they have company in their misery. This wasn't personal, even though it felt personal. This was projection. This was deflection. This was people running from their own demons and trying to convince you that you're the monster. You learned to trust your intuition with a fierceness you never had before. Before this, you might have doubted yourself when something felt off. You might have talked yourself out of your own knowing because you didn't want to seem paranoid or judgmental. But now you know that feeling in your gut is there for a reason. It's ancient wisdom. It's survival instinct. It's your subconscious mind processing thousands of micro-signals that your conscious mind hasn't caught up to yet. When something feels wrong, it is wrong. You don't need proof. You don't need permission. You need to listen and act accordingly. You learn that not everyone deserves access to you. This was hard, especially if you're someone who leads with kindness and openness and wants to believe the best in people. But access to you is a privilege, not a right. Your time, your energy, your presence, your trust, these are valuable resources that should be given strategically to people who've proven they'll honor them. You can be kind to someone from a distance. You can wish someone well without having them in your life. Boundaries aren't cruel. Boundaries are necessary. You learn the difference between real friends and people who are just around for the show. Real friends, the ones worth keeping, they don't need you to be perfect. They don't abandon you when you're going through something difficult. They don't talk about you behind your back because they're too busy having your back. They defend you in rooms you're not in. They celebrate your wins without jealousy. They tell you the truth even when it's uncomfortable. Everyone else, everyone who failed those tests, they were extras in your story, not main characters. And it's okay that they didn't make it to the next season. You learn that revenge is optional when you become the person they tried to prevent you from being. You don't need to destroy them. You don't need to expose them. You don't need to get even. You just need to keep growing, keep thriving, keep succeeding, keep healing, keep becoming. Your success is the revenge. Your peace is the revenge. Your happiness is the revenge. Your complete and total indifference to their existence is the revenge. They wanted you broken. You became bulletproof. That's the ultimate victory. Let me tell you what's coming, what they're terrified of, even though they'll never say it out loud. You're going to keep rising. Not because you're trying to prove something to them. You stopped trying to prove anything to people who were determined to misunderstand you a long time ago, but because that's just who you are. You're a builder, a creator, a force. And forces don't stop moving because small obstacles tried to block the path. They go around, they go through, they keep moving forward. There's going to come a day, maybe it's already here, when you're so far ahead that looking back at this period of your life feels like watching a movie about someone else. The pain will still be real, the lessons will still be valuable, but the people, they'll be so small in the rearview mirror they're almost invisible. You'll struggle to remember some of their names. You'll forget the exact details of what they said or did because it became so irrelevant to the life you built without them. And that forgetting, that genuine moving on, that's what they fear most. They're scared you'll become undeniable, so successful, so happy, so established that even people who believe their lies will have to confront the cognitive dissonance of what they were told about you versus what they can see with their own eyes. They're terrified of the day when their lies become obviously transparent, when the contrast between their bitter stagnation and your continuous growth becomes so obvious that no amount of spin can hide it. That day is coming. For some of you, it's already arrived. They're afraid you'll tell your story. Not in a petty way, not in a revenge-fueled expose, but in an honest, powerful, authentic way that resonates with other people who've been through similar experiences. They're scared your voice will reach people they're still trying to manipulate. They're terrified your truth will free others from the same type of psychological prison they tried to keep you in. Because your story, your real story, not the version they told, is powerful. It's transformative. It's dangerous to everyone who operates in darkness. Most of all, they're afraid you'll forgive them. Not in the way where you let them back in your life. Boundaries are forever for some people. But in the way where you release the weight of what they did. Where you stop carrying their betrayal around like luggage you're sentenced to drag through life. Where you decide that their actions taught you what you needed to learn, and now you're done with the lesson and everyone involved in teaching it. That forgiveness, that release, that freedom, it's the final move in the game they didn't know they were playing. When you forgive, you win. Completely, permanently, absolutely.